Hey everybody, going live at an odd time again, right? What is that, a little after 8? Hope y'all are doing good today. So, if you watched my live yesterday, I did my personal development yesterday morning and I turned the page and the book was over. I really enjoyed that book. I was quite disappointed that it was over when it was, but I definitely learned a lot of things from it, and I'm glad I read it. That was a book that, who knows how long it had been in my library. Hadn't picked it up. I have lots and lots of books, so much so that they do get overlooked. A lot of them I buy when I hear them recommended by people. I go ahead and purchase them so that they're at least in my list, so that when I get a chance or when I'm looking for something to read, that they're there. So I was looking for something else in my library to start today. So this one is late today because it was a struggle. Nothing inspired me as much as I had been inspired by the book I was reading. So that in itself said something to me, and maybe I just need to stay on this path of learning about leadership. So I was like, well, I'm really digging John C. Maxwell right now. I'll just go pull up a list. So I did. I literally Googled John C. Maxwell books, and it came up with a list, and then I sorted them in reverse order because I wanted to see, actually my assumption was that the book that Dylan is currently reading that I just got at this meeting we went to the other day was his latest book, because he's developing a plan around this book. So I thought it was his newest book, right? So when I pop them in reverse order, expecting that to be the latest book, and I was like, well, let me see what he wrote before that. It wasn't his latest book. So the 15 Laws of Growth, 12 Laws of Growth, 15 Laws of Growth. Now I can't remember how many laws there are, that we went to, and the book that Dylan's reading was written in 2012. So it wasn't his latest book. So I just picked up his latest book. So I ignored the entire library that I have available to me, books I've already purchased, and purchased another John C. Maxwell book. So this one, the latest one he wrote, looks like it was released in 2015, and it's called Intentional Living. And of course it caught my attention because it's definitely, intentional living to me means, obviously to live with intent, right? But what does that mean? That means you create your life. You decide, I talk about vision a lot. I talk about goals. I talk about dreaming big. That's my favorite thing, right? But you have to set yourself on that path. Whatever path you're on doesn't have to be the one you just roll down a hill on. You decide what you want to do every time you do something. So intentional living obviously caught my attention. On top of that, and then my fear, so my initial fear after I purchased it was, crap, is that a religious book? Because I had a friend of mine mention just going over some points in this book, and it had been brought up recently to her, and I was like, oh, maybe it's a religious book, which wouldn't be terrible, but it wouldn't exactly fit the need for this, right? So anyway, downloaded Intentional Living, John C. Maxwell, and I had to stop reading. I can't even read a whole chapter yet. There is so much good stuff in here, and even what I've read, there's too many notes for me to even share with you, or you're gonna be like, I am so tired of listening to this girl talk about leadership and how to create your life. So I'm just gonna kind of do an introduction and maybe talk about the first point. We'll kind of see how the time goes because I don't want to talk forever. But so I'm gonna have to read less. So maybe this is the time, and this book is literally for starting to create your story. So maybe it would be best if I read it slow so that I can figure out how to plug these things into my life as I go along. Again, so this is also precisely where I would even envision heading after starting to do this with you, starting to be vulnerable, starting to figure out that I need to share more. So then if you talk about living your story and intentional living and sharing with others, I mean, that's kind of perfect, right? So really looking forward to this. So the whole point starting out is that your life is your story. You know, we like stories. We like to hear stories. We like to tell stories. But your life is a story. And is that a story you want to tell? And statistics, you know, we talked about statistics will catch people's attention, right? We talked about that a couple days ago. But statistics aren't what inspires people. The stories do. You know, you want to hear success stories. You want to hear the warm and fuzzy stories. You want to hear the stories of what people have overcome. You want to hear the raw details. That is what inspires you, right? So your story is going to have the same thing, right? There's probably humor, there's probably drama, there's ups and downs, wins and loses. But you have a bigger story and people that only you can reach or affect. So don't miss out on sharing your story because of who you could potentially impact in your life. And that is huge. So we want our lives to matter, right? I think that would be a common thread across anybody. You want to matter. You want to have a level of significance. But how do you do that? And it again, same thing we talked about with communicating, right? And connecting. It's got to be about somebody else. It's got to be about the other people. It's got to be about making a change there. And it doesn't matter what you have. You start with what you have. You start with where you're at. You touch one person that could touch another person. You know, it has like this chain effect, and you do that every day. So you want to make sure that you're living every day with that intention. And you know, to bring positive change in people's lives, it requires you to have a life that matters too. So what is it that you're doing? What is that story that you can share? What is it in your life that only you can touch somebody and affect them? Just keep that in mind. Like, it just takes, I mean, maybe you're here to touch one person. We talk about this in the sense of even like, and you can think about that in terms of, you've probably heard that if you are religious at all, like, what if you're the one person that can help somebody or save somebody? So just think about that. That is like intentional living. What are you doing? So there's some people who do nothing, right? This was, I'm going to jump around for a second because there's people who do nothing. You can consider that like apathy, passive, whatever. They're like observers in the world, and I probably fit in this category, y'all. They're not making a difference though, and they're not necessarily living a life that matters. They're just watching it happen. You know, these are people that aren't very opinionated. Maybe they just kind of stay to the side. This is me, y'all. Which means they could be missing out on the best story ever, which is theirs, right? Like, are you living life and choosing to live life and doing what you want? Don't just be an observer. You know, you wish for more, but you're not doing anything to do it. Like, make sure you're taking action to do that. Because all of those things that we just talked about, being an observer, not doing anything, that is unintentional living, and you don't want to live without intention. So some people feel, so again, what makes people not want to do something, right? Why do some people do nothing? And they just feel like, some people think they're insignificant. Like, oh, I'm just one person. You know, we have an election year coming up, right? Or this is an election year. Some people don't want to vote. They're like, my vote doesn't matter. But one person is a start of anything, and one person can be a change, and one person can inspire another person, and it just keeps going, right? So a passive life, one that you just observe, that you watch pass you by, that is not meaningful. And that sounds so sad, and I don't think I'm to that extent. Like, I have goals and dreams and I'm doing things to put them in action, but for the most part, on a day-to-day basis, interacting with people, I'm I'm pretty observant and passive. So this spoke to me on a whole different level, like to the point I'm going to have to think about it some more. So just sharing, there's my little vulnerable thing that I've gotten so far out of this. Okay, some people don't want to tell their story. Why don't you want to tell your story? If you don't like your story, that means you don't like your life. If you don't like your life, you should be definitely taking action to make a difference. But you have a choice to, you know, think of it as an empty journal. That is your story. That is your life. You don't have to write your history. We don't care about history. We want to talk about your life. And you have all these blank pages to fill up with your life, which is your story. So just think about that. Like, what do you want? Definitely live with that intention. You know, when you live, I can't even talk, lead and live an intentional life. I was trying to make that one word, lead and live. When you have that intentional life, you're going to live your best story. So, you know, take those motions, put it in place. That's where you want to be, right? So let's talk about, so again, I told you I'd probably talk about one point because I could just keep going. I'm going to talk about one thing because we're talking about what it means, what the difference is, but let's go ahead and start talking about what you can do. Right? This is, look angry. I'm going to put my pen down, y'all. So how do you get on a path of intentional living? You have to put yourself in the story. Like, stop being passive. Stop watching everybody else's story. Stop, I don't know, just stop watching. Put yourself in the story. You are living your life, right? If you're not living your life, I don't know who is. But put yourself in that story, and you want to take action. Don't make excuses. And this was very interesting because we talked also in the last few days about like shiny object syndrome and the people who jump from one good feeling to a next but never like take action and put anything in place. So here's another great way to word this that I hadn't thought about before. It is easier to go from failure to success than from excuse to success. So you may start something and you may take action and you may fail. But that's okay. You're one step closer to your success. Or if you're sitting there doing nothing and you're making excuses as to why you're doing nothing or why you don't take the time to start or why you can't start or whatever, fill in the blank. Going from excuse to success is highly unlikely. That's huge, y'all. You just have to start. You have to start. Nobody starts out great. Like, you learn and you grow and you maybe fall on your ass and you just do it again and you keep going. And then there was a study done apparently of 300 of, like, if you had to go back in history up until the present, 300 of the most highly successful people. And this is crazy, y'all. So 3 out of 4 of them came from poverty or broken homes or had problems with their parents, okay? 74 out of 85 of them were writers. 16 out of 20 of those were poets who had psychological drama and things that went on in their homes that they probably never want to talk about. And 1 out of 4 of that, again, we're talking about this 300 overall number, 1 out of 4 of them actually had a physical handicap, whether they were blind or deaf or crippled. I mean, if anybody has an excuse, you know, and people will make excuses for anything. Growing up, that was a pet peeve of mine. People have an excuse for everything, like my childhood was terrible, or my parents don't support me, or I grew up in, you know, I didn't have a dad. I was, you know, single parent. We didn't have any money. We were broke. Fill in the blank. Everybody has something like that. I doubt there's anybody that had a perfect childhood. But you either, I mean, do you want to live in the past? Do you want to make your history your final story? Or do you want to overcome that history? You know, put it in the past where it belongs. That's where history belongs, right? It's in the past. And create the story that you want. You can write your own story, y'all. And 2 quotes, and I'm going to stop so I won't talk too long. two quotes. We all know the famous Gandhi quote, right? Because we're talking about taking action and writing your own story. So be the change you want to see in the world. I love that one. It's just a classic. It can fit across so many aspects of life, and no matter where you're at or what you're talking about, whether it's business, personal, it doesn't matter. That quote really fits. And I'm going to tell you this. I had another quote. I'd never heard it before. I really liked it. I had no clue how to say the guy's name. I looked it up, like searched for the pronunciation of this guy's name. And I think I already forgot. So if I botch this, sorry y'all. So the quote is, "To dare is to lose one's footing momentarily. Not to dare is to lose oneself." I mean, do you hear what that even says? So you try something and you might lose your footing. But if you don't dare to do something, you're going to lose yourself. So to dare is to lose one's footing momentarily. Not to dare is to lose oneself. That's fantastic, y'all. So the guy's name, Soren Kierkegaard. I think is how you say it. Kierkegaard. It's long. Anyway, if I botched that, I apologize. Anyway, so I am really, really, really looking forward to this new book. Again, it is intentional living, so it definitely goes right with what we've been talking about. I'm really looking forward to it. I hope that you're going to follow along. I hope that this is helping you. I hope that it's inspiring you to do your own personal development, because obviously we're all at different places and where we need to learn and what we need to work on. And this, y'all, is personal to me. I mean, these things don't fall in your lap for no reason. So I am enjoying it. Today makes 11 days in a row, y'all. How about that? So I appreciate you watching. If you have any comments, you can post them below. Hey, Lisa, I'm just finishing up, so go back and watch the replay if you want. But I appreciate you popping on, and just let me know. I look forward to talking to y'all tomorrow. Bye, y'all. Night.